Marvel and I have a unique relationship. I grew up a DC kid, having a lot more fun watching and following characters like Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, and I enjoyed the Teen Titans too, but never really got into anything Marvel other than Spider-Man. However, when I saw the Iron Man movie, I grew an appreciation for the character and the world the MCU was building. I watched Captain America, Thor, Iron Man 2, The Avengers, and on and on and on, and my appreciation for the MCU only grew stronger and stronger, until soon I was singing the praises of the Avengers more than I was the DC universe. However, Marvel has started to go downhill with a lot of its recent projects. Captain Marvel, Black Widow, Loki, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Thor Love and Thunder, all of which are either badly made or just mediocre. But none of these come close to the wrong that is She-Hulk Attorney at Law. Now, I should preface, I never read the She-Hulk comics, but I thought the design and idea of it was cool. Unlike some, I'm not averse to having a female character step in for an old hero, so long as it's written well and respects the OG hero. For example, I like some of the stuff I've seen with Jane Foster as the Mighty Thor, particularly in the game Marvel's Avengers. While not perfect, I thought the struggle Jane faced in battling cancer while also being a hero was gripping, and knowing that the power of Thor was making it harder for her to recover from her cancer was actually a strong plot point. But She-Hulk, I only knew two things about She-Hulk. One is that she was the cousin of Bruce Banner, the original Hulk, and she became a Hulk herself when Bruce Banner had to give her a full blood transfusion to save her life. Now she's a female Hulk with more control of herself, but not quite as much raw strength as Hulk himself. She also works as an attorney, which is a neat idea on its own. And the other thing I knew was that she was tall and green, but that's about all I got. I think she was in a Fantastic Four movie, but again, it's all I got. But after watching episode 1 of this new TV show, I can say something I never thought I'd say. This is the worst Marvel-related product I've seen. Now, granted, I have yet to see Loki or WandaVision, so they might be worse. But just based on what I've seen here, this was not only an insult to the character of She-Hulk, but an insult to Bruce Banner, an insult to Captain America, an insult to women, and an insult to men as well. Mostly though, it's just an insult to the audience. And I didn't think I'd do it again after the Halo Episode 1 review, but here we go. Let's do a full breakdown of this jolly green monster of an episode pilot. Let's go. We begin our video with our leading lady in her office practicing her closing arguments for a case in front of her best friend Nikki and another lawyer who will remain nameless. Jennifer delivers a pointed speech about power, and those who have it must be held to a higher standard because of it.
What is the responsibility of those with power? Do they merely have an obligation to refrain from the misuse of that power? Or do they have a duty to protect those without it?
I'm sure this line is going to have meaning later in the show, but for this episode, it's a nice hypocritical slap in the face. Now, after her talk, the male lawyer remarks it might mean more coming from him as a male attorney, and the girls just scoff at him and shoo him out the door. Then Nikki remarks how awesome the closing argument was, and how, if it doesn't work, she could always just go Hulk and show off her new powers to wow the jury. After this, Jennifer stops the show to talk directly to the viewer in a Deadpool-style fourth wall break to tell us how she became a Hulk.
Yeah, about that. It's true. I am a Hulk. And I'm guessing you're not going to be able to focus on this fun lawyer show until you know all about that, so let me get you up to speed.
And this is a nice bit of self-awareness, I suppose, and I understand that there were some fourth wall breaks in the original comic, so I won't be too harsh on this. Yet. We then cut to a few months earlier with Jennifer in her car driving with her cousin Bruce Banner on a road trip. While driving, Jennifer proposes a theory about Steve Rogers, or Captain America as we know him, in that he's secretly a virgin and died one because he never had time to get laid.
All you're doing is repeating everything that I've already told you about my friend and colleague.
Obviously, Captain America was a virgin.
I hope you liked that joke about Captain America because they bring it back up in the post-credit scene.
It's just so sad. Steve Rogers did so much for his country and he never got to experience sex. Did you see that ass? Like, that ass did not deserve to die a virgin.
Yeah, hold on to that for a while. Hold on to that joke for a while. I'll be back to it. Alright, well, while driving, a spaceship appears out of nowhere, which causes Jennifer to crash the car. When she crawls out, she tries to pull out Bruce too, but some of his blood gets into her open wound and thus turns her into a Hulk. And she runs off on her own in a Hulk-induced rage and then later wakes up in the middle of nowhere. Now, a normal person at this point might panic, cry, call for help, but instead, she notices a bar across the street and sneaks into the bathroom to clean herself up. While doing this, 4 women walk in and all assume that she was in an abusive relationship and start working together to freshen her up. They give her new clothes, shoes to wear, and even do her makeup. Why? And then when she asks for a phone, they all can't wait to offer theirs. And again, why? Okay, like, I'm all for benevolence and all, but really? I mean, I've met a lot of girls. I don't think any would be rushing, to give me new clothes and shoes and a phone if I were in the same situation. But hey, I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Anyway, I suppose things could be worse. I mean, after all, I shouldn't be too critical. They could have done the standard horny guys hitting on her and, oh, look, there they are. A few guys walk out of the bar and see her and start asking if she's by herself, what her name is, and following her a little, asking what she needs, asking if she needs company or a ride, asking if they're just being friendly.
What's up? How you doing?
Fine, thank you.
You with anyone?
I'm waiting for my ride.
What's your name?
I think my boyfriend's just...
Oh, come on. Where are you going? Let us keep you
Hey,
company.
we're just being friendly.
I want to pause here for just a second and point out something kind of interesting. Anytime Marvel tries to present mean or flirty or sexually abusive catcalling guys, they always make the guys talk in a manner that doesn't feel sexually assaulting at all. Like in the Captain Marvel scene where this guy walks up to her to offer her a ride and asks her to smile. He never says anything sexual. He just asks if she needs a lift, asks her to smile, shakes her hand, she steals from him. Nothing sexual implied. Here, you'll notice none of the guys say anything sexual. They ask if she needs a ride, ask if she's by herself, asks what her name is, says we're just being friendly, and asks if you'll just talk to them. Again, perfectly reasonable things to say. If I saw a woman by herself looking scared and disheveled like she was, I might say, hey, are you okay? Do you need a ride? What's your name? Can I call someone? Like, I would be friendly. I'm not saying that's what these guys are doing, and I'm not saying that's the way they were intended to be presented. But what I think is so funny is they're obviously meant to be presented as mean, catcalling, possibly sex-offending guys, but they really aren't talking like one. I don't know. Again, I don't know. Anyway, while they're talking to her, she instantly turns into the Hulk and roars at them and then is tackled by Bruce in a blackout moment.
Talk to us?
I felt the need to slow that down a little because if you blinked, you might have missed it. Again, all of this right here, I ask that you hold on to this moment and save it. All of this will be brought up later in a glorious little scene that will leave you howling with laughter, but livid with rage. All right, so, moving on. Jennifer wakes up in some tropical getaway house where the Hulk stays. Bruce reveals that this was his hideaway while he learned to control his alter Hulk nature. He reveals that Jennifer was infected with his blood and now she's a Hulk. He even comments that her blood is unique because when he was exposed to it, it healed his arm. To which she remarks,
Oh, because I'm better than you?
It's just basically different.
In a better way.
yeah, get used to that smug attitude. It's going nowhere. Bruce then tells her that this can't be undone. This causes her to suddenly start hyperventilating, and Bruce is worried she might be about to go Hulk until it cuts to her eating pancakes. So it was just a panic attack? We could have had something interesting there, revealing that she's struggling to control her anger or temper, but don't worry, folks. All this will matter later, I promise. All I ask is patience. Bruce explains that she won't be able to live a normal life again. She has to start learning how to master her Hulk self, which took him years and most likely will take her years too. But he wants to help her. He has a whole binder full of notes on how he was able to control his Hulk nature, and he's going to work through it with her. Bruce puts her in a chamber meant to test the threshold of anger required to make her go Hulk. He states that the key conditions are anger and frustration, to which Jennifer says,
Those are like the baseline of any woman just existing.
Could she be more annoying? Survey says no. Apparently Bruce is sick of her too, so he activates a death trap intent on forcing her to go Hulk. She does, smashes out of the room, and then reveals she is in full control.
Why are you talking to me like I'm a stray horse?
Jen?
Yeah. And I'm conscious.
This is incredible. You don't have an alter ego. You're the only one in there?
As far as I can tell.
To their surprise, it seems that while Bruce had to fight an alter ego and had to struggle with his own mind and body and needed constant training, soul-searching, and growth to master his Hulk form, Jennifer doesn't have an alter ego, has no drawbacks to being a Hulk, and has complete control of herself. Why? Oh, don't worry. She'll tell us later. Bruce then explains that it's only the first step. Now she needs to learn how to control her emotions and her anger, because even basic anger can cause damage. He starts by trying to do a form of meditation with her, which she doesn't take seriously at all, even making a joke about how all this seems like is a good way to get a tight ass.
About accepting the situation you're in.
Oh, I thought it was about getting my butt tight as hell. Up top.
You know what, Jennifer? Just keep doing that. Keep feeding me ammo. Keep it coming. I'll be firing it all back at you later. Trust me, this is making it easier for me. All right, we then cut to Hulk beginning her training by waking her up with an air horn to force her into Hulk form. They then begin to train, where Hulk shows her some of the stuff she may now be capable of, and in which she beats him in everything. In one-handed boulder throwing, she outthrows him. In balance training, she is far superior. In long jumping, she starts shouting, "Man!" like some stereotype jock. Oh, don't worry, I'll address it. And in ground pounding, she is again superior to Bruce. Yeah, screw years of training, hard work, and character growth. Let's have a girl who's had powers all of 36 hours show up in Bruce and everything with barely any experience whatsoever. Bruce explained to her that having these powers means that she will always have a target on her back and on the people that they care about. To this, she snaps at Bruce for ruining her life.
Oh, cool. Yet another way my life is ruined. Thanks, Bruce.
And it's here I want to pause a moment. I haven't brought up much about the comic because I haven't read it, but I'm pretty sure that in the original, Bruce volunteered to give her a blood transfusion to save her life. In this, she saved him from a car accident and it accidentally infected her. So this is not his fault. Why are you blaming him? He had no control over this. If you'd gone with the first scenario where he personally decides to do this, then you could bitch. But if it were me, I wouldn't be bitching. I'd be grateful to be alive. But that leads to my big question. Why change the origin story? My guess? They didn't want Bruce saving her. They wanted her to save herself. Typical, but granted it is just speculation. Back to the moronic crap. Bruce decides to lighten the mood by revealing that, as their Hulk bodies, they have hyper-fast metabolism. They can drink all the alcohol they like without getting drunk. And we then cut to them downing half the bar while belching back and forth. I do not want to hear a single woman who likes this show ever accuse guys of being gross, when you can say, yeah, that's fine, to this. I love just how unapologetically gross it is, because during their belch off, Bruce is talking about how he built this bar with Tony Stark, rubbing a little etching in the bar of their initials. This would have been a great moment to have a bit of development for Bruce, about how he feels with Tony gone, about how having a friend help him came to terms with who he was, about how Tony was one of the only people who encouraged him to become better and to embrace his Hulk side. We could have seen him use that to tell Jennifer how lucky she is to have him around to at least help her like Tony helped him. How she should find someone like Tony in her life. Instead, just a toast and then more belching.
Drink to that.
Hooray, thank goodness, we almost had a chance for character growth. Glad we dodged that. But now it is at this moment that I want to thank you all for your patience. I know I've mostly been gliding through this episode and telling you to wait for me to really attack it, but now is the time. This particular scene we're coming to in the show is probably the worst. So the next day, Bruce and Jennifer begin their meditation when Jennifer asks when she can go home. Bruce explains that she needs time and that being a superhero is a trial by fire. Jennifer says she doesn't want to be a superhero. She wants to go back to being a lawyer. Bruce rightfully points out that they can't pretend they aren't what they are, and more importantly, she needs to learn to control herself in stressful situations and to manage her anger so she doesn't accidentally transform and hurt someone.
We have to make sure of your ability to tolerate the stress and regulate your emotions, especially your anger.
All fair points. And then Jennifer speaks. Now I'm going to play her little rant, but I will be pausing it where I feel it's necessary to fire off some ammunition. Shall I? Let's go.
Here's the thing, Bruce. I'm great at controlling my anger. I do it all the time.
Oh, right. You mean like that time where those three guys just asked if you wanted some company and completely hulked out on them? Yeah, great control of your anger there, sweetheart. I can see you're a paragon of self-control. Awesome. Awesome job controlling your anger there, honey.
When I'm catcalled in the street?
Oh, all the things to talk about with that statement. Okay, so firstly, guys, catcalling is bad. It's mean. It's offensive, everyone. Okay, you should never call out a woman for her sex appeal or how attractive she is. That's wrong, and that's offensive. Instead, let's joke about the sexual activities of Steve Rogers, comment on his perfect ass, and joke about how yoga gives you a better body.
Did you see that ass? Like, that ass did not deserve to die a virgin.
Oh, I thought it was about getting my butt tight as hell.
Up top.
Because that's empowering and quirky. It's self-aware and mocks aspects of characters that we love while being hypocritical about standards of conduct based on gender. No, do not catcall women, people. That's rude. But crying about how a man died without ever having sex despite having a perfect ass, that's fine. It's funny. Secondly, you control your anger when being catcalled. I know 3 men from a bar who beg to differ. Thirdly, catcalling, whether you like it or not, is a form of compliment. Now, does it go too far? Sure. Can it be a little overly sexual at times? Yeah, I guess. But most of the catcalling I've heard in my life is, hey baby, you look fine, or damn girl, that's some swing on your back porch, or even the classic, you doing anything tonight, honey? Now, whether or not you like this is up to you, but is it not your goal to look good? I mean personally, I've met many women who go out of their way to look beautiful, to look sexy, doing their hair, doing their makeup, doing their nails, tummy tucks, wearing the right kind of outfits, doing everything they can to look sexual and pleasing. Haven't we seen it all the time where a woman will walk in and say to their husband, notice anything different? And they expect the husband to notice it and go, you did your nails differently, or you did your hair a new way. They want to be noticed. So I thought that was the goal. I mean, I would personally like that. I mean, if some girl called out to me saying, hey, handsome, loving the biceps, or hey, good looking, that's one perfect butt you got there, I would not be upset because 1, she's speaking the truth, and 2, because I'd be happy she noticed I'm good looking. So maybe I don't understand the rules of catcalling here, but I thought you wanted to be noticed. I mean, you literally moan later on in the episode about hulking out in your suit because you like how it looks. I mean, don't you want people to notice how you look? Don't you want to be seen as desirable? I don't understand how this works. You complain about catcalling, but I thought part of life was wanting to be seen as desirable. I don't know. Maybe I don't understand the rules. But fourthly, and not to be mean, but you get catcalled a lot. Don't flatter yourself. Given how you look in the beginning, honey, sure, personal preferences and all, but I'd put you at about a 4 or 5 out of 10, maybe 6 at best. Your Hulk form is honestly more attractive, to be honest, and that's why it's on all of the posters and advertisements. Those 3 guys must have been too drunk to care or too desperate to be picky, because honestly, I don't see much to catcall here. What am I supposed to say? Hey, babe, nice glasses. Hey, good looking, cool office suit. I love how it shows no skin at all. Hey, doll face, let your curly, fuzzy hair down. Yeah. No, I'm going to press exit out on you getting catcalled a lot. Sorry. I'm not saying catcalling's good. I'm saying if it happens, it don't happen much to you. And I know some of you are going to say, Raven, that's mean. I'm sorry, but she's insulting my sex right now. I can say what I want.
When incompetent men explain my own area of expertise to me, I do it.
Incompetent men. Yes, because anyone who wants to help you at your job or offer suggestions or speaks up around you must obviously be incompetent. What about if a woman corrected you? Would they be incompetent? What about when you were in law school? Did you have any male professors? Did those male professors, when they corrected you, were they incompetent as well? Because all men who know more than you, or have a suggestion, or have something to offer, must be incompetent. So when Bruce is talking to you about what you're going through and trying to speak reason to you, is he also incompetent? I love this. So far, the 2 things that make you angry, because you're talking about how I'm so used to controlling my anger, and the 2 examples of controlling your anger, 2 examples of things that make you angry, are catcalling and mansplaining. Oh, what a sheltered life you lead, honey.
Pretty much every day, because if I don't, I will get called emotional or difficult, or I might just literally get murdered.
Screw you hard. Firstly, the emotional female is a stereotype. It's expected. I'm not saying all women are emotional cases, I'm not saying they're all emotionally crazy, but let's be fair. When a woman lashes out, cries, screams, freaks out, squeals, or breaks down, we treat it as a stereotype. I'm not saying a good stereotype, I'm treating it as a stereotype. But let's talk about being a man here. When a guy is emotional, that's abnormal. A guy who is overly angry all the time or aggressive is considered toxic. A guy who cries or breaks down is called a pussy or a pansy. A guy who squeals or freaks out is a wuss or considered homosexual. Don't you sit there and go, if I show my emotions, I'll be called difficult or emotional, when men are mocked for being emotional. And the funny thing is, you're talking about being emotional and difficult. Right now, you're being emotional and difficult. In this very conversation, you're being emotional and difficult. You're emotional because you're upset that Hulk isn't listening to you, that Bruce is not letting you go home, and Bruce is still convinced that you need more help when you think you know so much more than him because he's just an incompetent man telling you what to do. Good job again controlling your anger. And then the second part, literally get murdered. Okay, in what circumstance would you be murdered for being angry or emotional? Don't you remember how earlier those 4 women ran to your aid without your consent just because you looked disheveled and out of sorts? Remember how those guys were just trying to make conversation because you looked lost, alone, and scared? No one has ever pulled a gun on you and said, stop being emotional. No one. I guarantee it. I would put money on it. No one has ever threatened your life because you might get a little angry. I'm sorry, that's ridiculous. That is absolutely ridiculous.
So I'm an expert at controlling my anger because I do it infinitely more than you.
You know, if I were Bruce Banner, my response would be this. Have you ever put a gun in your mouth and pulled the trigger, Jennifer? I have. I'd be dead, but the big guy won't let me die. Have you ever been lied to and locked in a cage? I have. Have you ever faced down world-ending threats and been required to stomach the carnage and devastation all around you? I have. Have you ever been looked on as a monster because of what you could potentially do, not because of who you are? I have. Have you ever watched countless friends and colleagues die in front of your eyes, and then when you hunt down the remaining colleagues, they're broken and lost, and you have to try to pull them back together? I have. You don't get to sit there squealing from your high horse about how you get triggered by men catcalling you and mansplaining to you, and how you're somehow superior to the rest of us because you managed to not lose your temper at these mean men. I have stared down the literal apocalypse more times than I'd like to remember and still kept my sanity. I faced death, both self-inflicted and external, and I've walked away from it. I confined myself to a literal hut to hide myself from the world and had to pull myself together, but thank God I never had to deal with catcalls and mansplaining. Lord knows I wouldn't have been able to keep my cool through all that. You truly are a paragon, madam. Does anyone remember in Avengers when Bruce reveals his secret that he's always angry? He was showing how he'd learned to transform on his own by balancing out his emotions and learning to control his aggressive thoughts. It's an iconic scene because it reminds us that Hulk and Bruce have had to go through a lot together to truly become one. And now this little tramp is moaning about how difficult her life is thanks to standard sexism when this man has struggled with depression, suicide, the loss of friends, isolation, and massive world-ending calamities. Yeah, go soak your head. Totally. Your catcalling and sexism is so much worse than anything Thanos did. This girl is an insult to Bruce Banner and an audience who knows what he's been through. Oh my gosh, but it's not over. Oh, Lord, it's not over. In fact, if anything, we're only halfway through this.
So all of this just feels like projecting a lot of shit onto me.
See.
First of all, it's not projection. Bruce has had to deal with these issues and thinks that you will too because, for one thing, you're the only other Hulk besides him, and he's making sure you don't make the same mistakes he did because guess what? If he's anything to go by, you might. He's afraid that you aren't in full control and wants to help you, not help himself. And as we can see in this clip, she's starting to transform, and that could be Bruce's evidence for why she still needs to stay. It could be a harsh moment of reflection for her, realizing, oh crap, I changed without meaning to. I actually could use some more control of this. Maybe Bruce was right.
No, I'm doing this.
Oh, thank goodness, guys. We almost had a moment of self-reflection and humility there. Thank goodness Mary Sue swooped in to save the day. Yes, she can now transform when she wants. Because you see, progressive character growth and self-reflection are all for toxic, projecting, jolly green giant men, not women.
You guys have outgrown your binder, cuz. Love you, Bruce, but I'm going home.
I've outgrown your binder. Okay, that binder was Bruce's years of study on his own condition, working hard to better understand who he was, what the Hulk was, and how it affected him. the steps he had to take to become better, the growth, successes, mistakes, trials, and errors, all that formed his growth into who he is and how he managed to become whole again. It could be considered his life's work and a testament to his character throughout the MCU. And Jennifer just outgrew it. She's too good for it. It's childish stuff, like training wheels on a bicycle, Happy Meal toys, and Charles Entertainment Cheese the Third.
It is Charleston Entertainment Cheese the Third. The first brother died in the war. Put some respect on his name.
Can you not see how this is just a giant middle finger to everything the Hulk is? Jen then heads to the Jeep to drive back to LA, and Bruce chases her to point out that she has a responsibility to her powers now. Who is going to protect the world if not us, she asks, to which Jennifer asks if he's quoting a comic book. Well, yes, he is, darling, or to put it more accurately, he's quoting your words in the beginning of the show. Remember how you asked if having power meant simply that you were obligated to refrain from its misuse, or did you have the responsibility to use it to help those who without it? Your implication being that you supported the latter, and Uncle Ben would be proud of you for that, by the way, but here you are saying you don't want that responsibility. You don't want to be a superhero. You don't care if you have the most power anymore. You're not willing to answer for it or learn accountability to it. You're a hypocrite. And I want to point this out. I find this really funny. I hear all the time from people that we need more women superheroes. We need more female superheroes. Sure, I agree. I would not mind female superheroes, but anytime I see them, they always seem resistant to it. Especially here, just, we want more female superheroes, so we're going to write in She-Hulk, but she doesn't want to be a superhero. Subversion! Whatever.
Oh, so you didn't wind up alone? Hiding away on some remote beach with no friends, no relationships, never seeing your family, and definitely not dealing with a decade's worth of trauma? Why would you want that for me, Bruce? You're a cautionary tale.
He doesn't, though. He literally is trying to help you so you don't have to deal with the same things he did. That's what he's trying to do. Bruce found connection through his work as a superhero and through his recovery. Yes, he's a cautionary tale, and that's because he wants you to avoid what happened to him by helping you along the way. He didn't have help, dummy. He didn't have anyone to help him. He had to do a lot of this on his own. He wants to help you. And again, all of this is so painful to watch because she's insulting Bruce and calling him out for his struggle and his journey. I find this hilarious because it was through his struggles and journey that we came to love his character. But with her, she's mocking the journey itself, saying she doesn't need that journey or that growth. She's already perfect. Accept her for it, won't you? As she gets in the car, Bruce tries to explain that she can't run from what she is, and denying half of what she is no way to live in the first place. She ignores this and decides to drive off. But we get one more sweet moment where Bruce says,
What, you think you can just say a bunch of mean things like that and then take off?
Yes!
pointing out that she's been mean, unreasonable, and insulting to him. His feelings have been hurt, and he's showing incredible restraint right now. He hasn't lashed out, he hasn't yelled, he hasn't lost his cool, or even once, despite all of the hurtful and rude shit she just threw at him, he's still staying calm. Meanwhile, she is screaming, running him over, and running away. Again, great at controlling your anger and emotions there, sweetheart, isn't she, guys? I mean, even after all that, though, Hulk still tries to point out she could be better than she is. To which she loses her temper, transforms, and punches Bruce in the face.
You're doing the best you can, and you can do better.
Enough dialectical behavioral bullshit!
Again, so great at controlling your anger. So good at being restrained and collected when frustrated or angry. Surely her years of being catcalled and mansplained have served her well here. She's so good at being rational and well-spoken. Watch her control her temper as she flails at Bruce like a child, steps on his foot, and then judo throws him for several yards, then tries to stomp him into the ground, all the while Bruce remains composed and trying to hold back so he doesn't hurt her. Although, I guess it could be argued that if he actually did try to hurt her or beat her up, that could be considered abuse, and that would be a no-no, but whatever. She's just so mature, controlled, and collected, guys. Just so good at controlling her anger and frustration. It makes total sense she can switch between forms at will when she can so obviously control her anger. I mean, doesn't it make sense to you guys that she can magically learn how to transform herself at will, even though she has absolutely zero level of understanding of how to control her anger? Now, Bruce does try to pacify her with a Hulk clap, which puts her down for a moment. He argues that he's been through this before and just wants to help, to which she says that she's not him. He calls her a blockhead, she calls him a dummy, and then tries to do a clap like he did. but fails. Now this might be a good moment for Bruce to say, that all you got? I learned that from trial and error. It's a nifty trick, and if you stay, I can teach you how to do it. And that could be her moment to go, you know what? Maybe he does have more experience than me. Maybe I could actually learn more. No, she just tries it again and gets it right. In fact, she does it so well, she can just do it over and over and over again with consecutive claps, bringing Bruce to his knees. I do love pissing on fan favorite characters. Look, I'm done with that. Skipping over the stupid now, the two finally lose their control and start rolling around in a fight that causes them to crash into the bar and destroy it. This sobers them up, and he tells Jennifer that she's going to help him fix the bar before she goes. And as they work, he tells her that he respects her decision to go, to which she gives another fourth wall break nod to the audience.
So if you want to go back to your life as a lawyer, I respect that.
Thanks. He doesn't mean that.
I know this is meant for laughs, but all I could do was cringe. As she gets ready to leave, Bruce hugs her and she says basically a sorry, not sorry.
And I'm sorry that I said a bunch of harsh but very true things.
Yeah, you only make me hate you more. I hate this backhanded apology bullshit. The things you said to him hurt. You said mean and very rude things to Bruce, and you're not even going to give a real apology to the man. If I were Bruce, I'd have walked away. I'd have told her, you know what, you deserve what you get, and leave her at it. God, that was terrible. She then drives back and reaffirms that she was right and Bruce was wrong. She hasn't had to turn into Hulk once, therefore it's all fine. She's just so likable, guys. I love this character. She just deserves all of our love and respect. She then goes off to go win her big case because this isn't a superhero show. This is a lawyer show.
Basically, I was right and Bruce was wrong. And I never have to be a Hulk. Okay. So now I'm gonna go win this case. Lawyer show.
A law show. Well, way to fail your audience, guys. I highly doubt most Marvel fans tune in to watch Law and Order, but fine, sure. So you want to sell yourself as a crime drama show. A law show like Bull or Law and Order or Blue Bloods. Sure, I like some Law and Order. Lark and I have studied the ins and outs of the courtroom, and Lark even has a pre-law degree, so it should be very entertaining. Let's see her handle this.
You'll see that my client was well within his right to protect his business interest. These accidental deaths were an unfortunate byproduct of an ambitious expansion plan.
What? What? Did you really say that? Oh my God, you should be fired, sir. Your client deserves to go to jail for hiring such an idiot of a lawyer. This is your closing argument? Dude, you know what you just did? You literally just tied his business to the deaths.
These accidental deaths were an unfortunate byproduct of an ambitious expansion plan.
All Jennifer has to do now is stand up and say, I don't need a closing argument. What he said, Your Honor, I don't think any closing argument is needed. Your job is to discuss how the deaths are unrelated to your client, and now you just said how your client's business plan resulted in these deaths. Okay, guys, time for some legalism. Time for some legal lesson. When I first saw Jennifer and this guy talking, I thought they were doing opening statements, not closing arguments. Jennifer's closing argument in the beginning that she was practicing was full of idealism and the idea of civic duty. That's usually what you do in an opening statement. In the opening statement, you point out the nature of the crime, you remind the jury of their duty to be impartial, to judge beyond a shadow of a doubt, and to find the defendant guilty or not guilty. You basically briefly go over what you'll show to help convince the jury, and then move on. With the closing arguments, idealism is removed. You tell the jury to look at the facts as they stand, and using those facts, you paint a picture of innocence or guilt. You state plainly, based on the evidence we've shown you, the defendant is clearly guilty or not guilty, and it is your duty to find him as such. That's it. But here, the attorney literally just doomed his client by saying, the facts reveal my client's ambitious business ventures killed these people. No! Dude, you've lost the case. You've tied his actions with the deaths. He is now guilty of unintentional manslaughter now, at least.
Did my client know lives would be endangered? That is debatable and depends on your definition of knowing.
I would laugh you out of the courtroom, dude. How about if you said something like, yes, people died during his business venture, but as we showed in the evidence, all the individuals involved signed waivers that confirmed they knew the risks and participated anyway. They were aware of what they were getting into, therefore my client cannot be held responsible. That is a much stronger case. Not, it's debatable based on your definition of knowing. Please, dude. Come on. In fact, can we take another look at the beginning of the show? If you listen closely at the beginning when she's practicing her closing argument, you hear the lawyer guy listening, giving advice or criticism as she's practicing. I don't hear all of it, but I hear him saying that she needs to smile more and be less wordy. Now, the smile thing is stupid. I grant you that. But the wordy part? That is legit criticism. Most jurors have no knowledge of law and just want to go home. You need to speak to them in short and simple to understand ways so that they can better understand you. Word salad and idealistic nonsense is only going to irritate them. So he's actually right on that one. You need to be direct, open, and simple. Now, obviously, he's only saying that because he's the big bad guy trying to be, completely incompetent and trying to tell her how she should do her job. But no, really, that's a good criticism to have. You should be less wordy. I think what should happen is she say, look, I'm going to still do the closing argument, but what do you think I should change? That's all she has to do. She doesn't have to act all, you silly man. Anyway, moving on. Suddenly, right before Jennifer can give her arguments, crazy lucha libre black lady busts in. Who is this? Why is she here? What does she want? We don't know. But there she is, causing destruction and havoc. I guess we'll figure it out in the next episode, maybe? I don't know. But anyway, while everyone covers and hides and officers try to subdue crazy lady, Nikki tells Jennifer to Hulk out and deal with it. To which Jennifer seems very hesitant.
No, did you hear thing? Oh, right now in front of everybody? Yes. Come on, civic duty. Jen, come on. Oh, God, I really like this outfit.
Even when lives are in danger, you won't do what you need to? Wow, what a hero you are. Oh, sorry, that's right. You don't want to be a superhero. Then how about, what was that with your closing argument earlier?
Because those with the most power have the most to answer for.
About that bit you said about the responsibility of those with power? Well, you have the power. I guess you don't even practice what you preach, huh? But, okay, eventually she does Hulk out. And we then get the ultimate in cringe.
Who the hell are you? Jennifer Walters, attorney at law.
Yes! Marvel at it! Marvel at the horrid CGI! Gaze in wonder at the absolute flat delivery of dialogue from both Crazy Lady and Jennifer. Be amazed as the much taller Jennifer doesn't even look at her opponent when she speaks, but directly ahead, making the audience wonder who the hell she's talking to. And be astounded at the absurdity of anyone asking that question or even bothering to answer it when asked. This kind of cringe is the stuff legends are made of. This should be in a museum, guys. This should be put on replay in a museum, and just at the bottom it says, cringe. Look away, children. Okay, then she has a brief and very uninspiring fight scene where she throws a table, then punches Crazy Lady once, and she's done. Everyone is in awe as she walks over, turns back to normal, and then gets back on her shoes. Well, you won, honey. Any closing words?
I'm ready to give my closing argument now.
Oh, ha. No, you're not. Firstly, the room is going to be evacuated and all the people inside checked by an EMT to make sure nobody's hurt. The jury will be dismissed and a new date and place set for the trial, if the trial continues now. More than likely, a mistrial will be declared because an investigation will have to be opened to see if Crazy Lady has anything to do with the trial and if she might have sullied the case to the defense or prosecution. Then there's the fact that the jury will be biased now because they won't want to judge against a woman who can do what you can, so she'll have to recuse herself. Yeah, this show doesn't know how law works, so you failed as both a superhero show and a law show, which begs the ultimate question, why you use the Marvel label and why you exist to begin with. And now that would be the end, but remember, there was a post-credit scene we got that does that last little shit on Captain America, because again, it's funny and quirky to talk about a man's perfect ass and his sex life, existent or non, but catcalling a woman is just hard and rage-inducing. Don't do it, guys. Screw everything having to do with this. Okay. Nightmare's over. Let me make a few predictions before I go into my final thoughts. I predict two things. Number one, I predict that I'm going to be called sexist, bigoted, and closed-minded for my statements here. And feel free. I don't care. I call it like I see it. And this show is filled with woke garbage, and even its defenders have had to admit as such. And the second thing I predict that there will be plenty of channels, articles, videos, and think pieces that try to defend this show or claim that it will get better. So to them, I will also predict it will not. I don't see the show getting better. I see the show getting much, much worse. Why? A couple of reasons. One, who did this show appeal to? It's a Marvel superhero story, so maybe it appeals to young boys or young men. After all, She-Hulk is basically a sexy big mama for boys to drool over, and she's a kick-ass character in the comics, so maybe that's the target audience? Well, no, I can't think that's true. Men are incompetent, according to Jennifer, and all the men in the movie, except for Bruce, are shown to be stupid, sexist, or, even Bruce is made out to be weaker and less special than Jennifer. So maybe it appeals to women then. After all, the main character is a woman. Like, it's all talking about strong women and such. Well, I can't really see why women would want to see this. The comedy's pretty weak and pretty childish, too, with a lot of belching jokes, virginity jokes, and just weak fourth wall breaking moments that feel more like a kid's movie. Okay, so maybe it's meant for children. Again, I doubt that too because there's very little action in it. It's mostly just talking and conversation, which is going to bore the kiddies. There are jokes there, but they're mostly about sex and domestic abuse. There's very little that would draw a child's attention, unless you're talking about the fourth wall breaks, of which there are only 3. And the fight scenes aren't even that good. When I was a kid and I watched like superhero movies, I only wanted to cut to the fight scenes, and there are only 2 in this movie, and they're all pretty bad. So who is this meant for? Feminist critics and film reviewers, yeah. Yeah, that's probably who it's meant for. 2, the show feels as a superhero and law show, meaning that's not its intended direction. Now, based on the trailers I've seen, there's very little in the way of superhero action or fighting, and based on this episode, there's very little of it that's good. And based on the courtroom scene, there's very little knowledge of law and order or actual law practice either, considering how poorly the closing arguments were handled and how little the show seemed to care about showing her as a lawyer. That means the true goal of this show is more of an Ally McBeal-style show, but in the MCU. It's going to be adult humor with a little self-aware nod here and there and the exploits of a 30-year-old single woman being a 30-year-old single woman while making snide comments and jokes about MCU characters and events, reminding the audience that you're in the MCU, haha, isn't this cool and quirky? The only positive videos about this garbage will be one saying, look at the Easter eggs in this episode, look at what they referenced. Already people are talking about how, oh, look at that, there's going to be Daredevil characters in this movie. Oh, look at that, there's a little nod to this one obscure movie. That's all it's going to be. It's just going to be people pointing and going, look, look. And number 3, no progression and no goal. What does Jen have to prove or do? What's her overall goal or desire? What does she want? She clearly already has a mastery over her Hulk nature. She doesn't struggle with the dual personality, and she doesn't have a villain or power she wants to overcome. She doesn't even have a domestic goal. She's not trying to find a husband or win back custody of kids or anything of that kind of nature that would make me invested in her. She's not trying to save the orphanage she grew up in. She's not trying to re-find her parents. She's not trying to find out this dark secret man with the mask. There's nothing there. What is she? She is a Mary Sue who don't need no man to tell her what to do. She's the big green honey who thinks she's too funny. She's going to make jokes, remind us she's better than everyone else around her, and probably manhandle some guys. Let's be real here. So now time to answer the ultimate question, though. Can this be salvaged? Could this possibly be done better? Raven, I hear you ask, you seem so cold and angry towards this show, but surely this was all they could do. Surely there's no need to be green with envy. Was there any possible way to make this show work? Well, there might just be. And I'll talk about that in a video sometime in the future. This one's getting too long. If you're wondering if I'll watch more of this show, probably not. But if it starts getting positive reviews later on, like people start saying, hey, it got a lot better, I don't know, I might give it a chance. But as I said, I doubt it. This show is an insult to men. It's an insult to women, to children, to Marvel fans, to Bruce Banner, and to writing overall. It's a giant middle finger to everyone who loved Bruce in the Avengers, and it's unapologetic about it to the extreme. And if you like this show, more power to you. But I think this is all woke garbage and belongs in the trash bin. Thank you all for watching this very unique episode review, and I will see you in my next video. Take care.